Hi everybody, so today I'm going to take you through an exercise that could improve your forward fold in as little as 5 minutes. For today's exercise, what we're going to need is a set of cork posture rolls. If you don't have a set of cork posture rolls, you can try using yoga blocks, potentially a rolling pin. Get creative, come up with something. We want it to be fairly firm, but yeah, I'll show you what we're going to do and then you can get creative with coming up with your own solution if you don't have a set of these. We'll need a cushion or perhaps even a few cushions depending on your posture. And we're also going to need a static back setter. So if you've done static back before, we want this to be slightly lower than your normal static back setup. If you've not done static back before, what we want is a firm surface, so maybe a table, a chair, an ottoman, something like that, that comes to just below your knee height. So this table here is absolutely perfect for me. Before we get into our exercise, let's first start by practicing a forward fold and seeing how we get on. So the first thing I want you to do is just fold down naturally how it feels normal to do so for you. I want you to take a look at your foot alignment. So are your feet pointing out to the side? And if so, I want you to draw them in so that your second and third toe faces forward. Do you really notice that you roll out onto the outside edges of your feet? And if so, I want you to really pin into those big toes. And finally, do you notice that your hips and knees are backwards of your ankles and that you have this quite like open angle here at your ankles? If that's the case, I want you to come back up, bend into your knees slightly so that you keep those knees over the ankles, and then bring your belly down towards your knees or towards your thighs and straighten out the backs of your legs from here. So if you're anything like me and you are inclined to hyperextend your knees, which is what I was just showing you there, when you do that, you probably feel quite a significant stretch in the backs of your knees here. Whereas when we get ourselves into this sort of better forward fold position with our hips more neatly stacked over our ankles and our ankles in more dorsiflexion, I feel a real big stretch at the back of my calves. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I was told for a long time growing up that I had tight hamstrings because I struggled to forward fold and touch the ground. The more I've explored posture and the more I've learned about my body, I've realised it is in fact I have tight calves, and you might well be the same. So what we're going to go through is a bit of a calf release whilst in static back position. So for that, we're going to bring our static back setup in close, and we're going to have our pillow handy for putting under our head. Our cork posture rolls, or equivalent, are going to go onto our firm surface, one quite near the front and one quite near the back. From here, what you're going to do, it can sometimes be a bit of a balancing act, so you might need to put these in place once you're in position. We're going to come to rest our legs on top of the cork posture rolls, with our bum as nice and close up to our surface as possible, so you might have to just draw it in a little bit once you get there. I want you to have enough padding underneath your head that your lower back naturally settles onto the floor. So if you really notice that you're arching your lower back, keep putting cushions under your head until that lower back naturally settles on the floor. We don't want you pulling it down into position. Just check that you've got about hip width distance in between your knees. So we want to make sure those knees aren't falling in and they're not falling out. And once you're in your setup here, I want you just to make sure that your calves or your lower legs are roughly parallel with the floor. So we don't want those ankles really high up. We don't want your bum lifted off the ground because your surface is so high. But we also don't want the ankles much, much lower than the knees. So we want to be in this roughly parallel position. From here, I'm just going to get you to relax with your palms out at 45 degrees, palms facing up. And we're just going to breathe into this for a few minutes. So feeling into that pressure from the rolls on the backs of your calves here, perhaps even exploring whether moving them slightly gets into a bit more of an area where you feel some tension. and really allowing those rolls to sink deeply into your calves the longer that you're here. And this is going to start unpicking the fascia that's maybe become sort of stuck and bound to the muscles, bound to the bones, and prevents your ankles, your legs in general from moving functionally because it's all wound up and tight, dehydrated. And what we can do by applying this pressure to the fascia is start to rehydrate it and loosen it from the bones and from the muscles, which is going to allow the ankles to move better and hopefully allow us to sink deeper into that forward fold when we come back to it at the end. If you found a really good pressure point on those calves, so perhaps draw the knees slightly closer and roll them away to find that point where you feel the most pressure. So for me, it's ever so slightly lower than where I am now. So I'm going to move that one roll a bit further down my calves. And once I've found that point, I'm going to just slightly take my knees wider and then draw them back in again. And this is going to start nudging that fascia, unpicking it, unpeeling it, and slowly starting to release off those calves. We've got the added benefit whilst we're here of being in static back position, which is a great position for restoring pelvic balance, which is going to help with our forward fold as well. But we're also in hip flexion, which obviously we will need to be when we're in our forward fold too. I did this exercise for the first time the other day after having gone on a really long run, and my calves were feeling really, really tight. So I'm definitely prone to tight calves anyway, but after going for a run, they had become particularly tight. And by doing this exercise, I released off the calves just by lying in this position for about 10 minutes. And the difference then in going up and down stairs and things like that was significant even after just those 10 minutes. So if you're somebody who has really tight calves, or if you're somebody who's a runner, then using this exercise could make a significant difference in as little as like 5 to 10 minutes. If you really want to, you can go in this position for 20, 30 minutes. That isn't going to be a problem either. And what you can do is over the time that you're here, you might notice that the pressure that you feel from the rolls starts to sort of lessen in the position that you're in, and you can explore moving them along. So I'm going to move this one even lower, which is going to take my ankles off the low roll, but that's okay because I'm really working where I feel that tension, which is really kind of on those lower outer edges of the calves. And as I draw them out to the side, I can really feel that pressure increase. So I'm just going to keep that slight like toggling back and forth with my knees, not letting them collapse all the way in together and not letting them fall all the way out to the side, but just micro movements back and forth just to explore that area of tension. And as I mentioned, this would be a really great exercise to use after a run if you're somebody who gets quite tight calves, or maybe your ankles don't move particularly well. And hopefully, if you're feeling that pressure, if you're feeling that level of tension with the rolls sinking deeply into your calves, then when we get back up to forward fold, you're going to notice that you can hang deeper than you previously could. And you might even notice that the area of stretch has changed when we come back to forward fold. So when I did this previously, I could really feel the stretch in my upper calf area, but it might be that kind of area has moved with what we're doing here. We've got about 30 seconds left, so just continue to breathe deeply. Trying to take deep inhales through the nose and out through the nose as well. And feeling how as you deeply inhale, it kind of pushes the back into the lower back into the ground more as that like diaphragm inflates. And then really see if you can sink deeper into those rolls on the exhale. Relaxing off there and just bring yourself slowly out. Removing your static back setup And then let's come back into our forward fold. So making sure you set those feet up nice and neutral to start with. So we're thinking about the second and third toe facing forward. If you noticed before that you wanted to buckle backwards, come into it the same way we did previously. So bend those knees slightly, keeping the knees over the ankles. Bring your belly down towards your thighs, and then straighten the legs out and see if you can hang any deeper. I definitely feel like I'm hanging further down, and like I said, I can now really feel how that point of stretch has moved from being quite high up in my calf to actually now it's much further down near my Achilles. So what I'll probably do is next time I do this exercise, I'll start to move that roll down even more. And if I were to have spent 10 minutes there, perhaps I would have even done 2 or 3 more positions, and I might even be feeling the stretch in a slightly different place. I can really feel this left hip working as well. So notice as to whether your forward fold has improved. And if you notice a significant change, it is probably a sign that your tight calves are what are restricting you from folding neatly. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that you learned something about your body too.